ready? Okay, let's go. Tammy, you can see thick black smoke billowing from the federal court building downtown.
We are seeing literally dozens of people that are bleeding. Some of them you can't even make them out. They are so badly injured.
The impact was...
At 9:02 in the morning, on April 19, 1995, a truck exploded on a street in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. It was not a small explosion. The Ryder truck had been approximately 4,800 pounds of ammonium nitrate fertilizer mixed with nitromethane fuel. The man who packed it had rented it under a fake name, driven it to Northwest 5th Street, and parked it directly beneath the America's Kids Daycare Center on the second floor of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. He lit the fuse. Then he walked away. What happened next would become the deadliest act of domestic terrorism ever carried out on American soil. The blast was felt 30 miles away. 168 people died. 684 were injured. 324 buildings in the surrounding area were damaged or destroyed. The financial toll came to $652 million. 19 of the dead were children. Most of them had been dropped off at the daycare center by parents who worked in the building. Parents who came back to rubble. The man who built that bomb was named Timothy James McVeigh. He was 26 years old. He was from Lockport, New York. He had served in the United States Army, fought in the Gulf War, and earned a Bronze Star for his marksmanship under fire. He had come home from that war believing that the federal government was at war with the American people. The date, April 19th, was not chosen by accident. 2 years earlier, on April 19th, 1993, federal agents had ended a 51-day standoff against a religious group called the Branch Davidians at their compound near Waco, Texas. The raid left 75 people dead in the fire. McVeigh watched it on television and never recovered from what he saw. April 19th was also the 220th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord, the first shots fired in the American Revolution. To Timothy McVeigh, he was not a terrorist. He was a soldier firing back. While rescue workers were still pulling survivors from the rubble, Timothy McVeigh was on the highway heading north. No sirens behind him, no panic. Just a man driving a 1977 Mercury Marcus through the Oklahoma countryside. Then a single detail went wrong. The car had no front license plate. Oklahoma Highway Patrol Trooper Charlie Hanger spotted the vehicle and pulled it over near mile marker 202 on Interstate 35, just north of a small town called Perry, Oklahoma. It was a routine stop. Hanger had no idea what had happened in Oklahoma City that morning. When he asked the driver for his license, he noticed the outline of a weapon pressed beneath the man's jacket. He asked about it. The driver admitted he was carrying a loaded .45 caliber Glock pistol, loaded with a type of hollow point bullet known as black talon rounds, designed to expand inside the body on impact. Trooper Hanger drew his own weapon. "So is mine," he said. The man was handcuffed and taken to the Noble County Jail. He was booked on a charge of carrying a concealed weapon. His name, for the moment, meant nothing to anyone. Meanwhile, the Federal Bureau of Investigation began tracing the vehicle identification number stamped on a rear axle recovered from the bombing site. The axle had been blown over 100 yards from the explosion. They traced it to a Ryder truck rental agency in Junction City, Kansas. A composite sketch was drawn from the rental agent's description of the man who had rented the truck. The sketch matched the man sitting in the Noble County Jail exactly. FBI agents took McVeigh into federal custody. Inside his car, they found a small envelope in the dashboard. It contained handwritten excerpts from a novel called The Turner Diaries. a book about a group of anti-government extremists who destroy a federal building with a truck bomb. Timothy McVeigh had not even cleaned out his car. The federal trial was moved 500 miles away to Denver, Colorado. Oklahoma was too close. The wounds too raw. The entire state had buried its dead. A fair jury was not possible in a city that was still holding funerals. On June 2, 1997, after 38 days of testimony, the jury found Timothy James McVeigh guilty on all 11 federal counts. On August 14, 1997, he was sentenced to death. His co-conspirator was a man named Terry Nichols, a Michigan-born farmer who had helped McVeigh plan the attack and assemble the bomb. Nichols was tried separately. His jury could not unanimously agree on a death sentence. He received life in federal prison instead. As of today, Terry Nichols is still alive. McVeigh showed no remorse. Not in the courtroom, not in media interviews, not ever. He described the children who died in the daycare center as collateral damage. It is a term drawn from military doctrine. It is how armies describe the unavoidable deaths of civilians caught in a legitimate military operation. Timothy McVeigh believed he was conducting a legitimate military operation. Here is the part of this story that separates Timothy McVeigh from almost every other death row case in American history. He did not fight to live. He chose to die. Not in the passive way that someone finally runs out of options after decades of appeals. McVeigh made an active decision. He waived his collateral appeals. The legal mechanisms that keep most death row inmates alive for years, sometimes decades, after sentencing. He told his attorneys to stop fighting on his behalf. He described his upcoming execution as deluxe suicide by cop. In the spring of 2001, his execution was scheduled for May 16th. Then a problem emerged. The Federal Bureau of Investigation admitted it had failed to hand over more than 3,000 pages of documents to McVeigh's defense team during the original trial. Documents that should have been disclosed years earlier. Attorney General John Ashcroft granted a 30-day stay of execution to allow McVeigh's lawyers time to review the material. McVeigh was barely interested. His legal team reviewed the documents, found nothing that would have changed the outcome at trial. The execution was rescheduled for June 11, 2001. McVeigh said fine. He had already made his peace with it. He did not want to die in a cage over the span of decades. Watching the world narrow down to concrete walls and fluorescent light, he wanted an ending, a final act of control, in a life defined by its obsession with control. He had chosen his exit. He had written his final statement. He was ready. What happened on June 11, 2001 was unlike any federal execution that had come before it. For the first time in American history, the Attorney General of the United States authorized a closed-circuit television broadcast of a federal execution. Encrypted digital lines ran from the death chamber at the United States Penitentiary in Terre Haute to a location in Oklahoma City, where 232 survivors and family members of the bombing sat in front of a widescreen television and waited. They had asked to watch. More than 250 of them had formally requested to be present in some form when the man who took their people died. Attorney General John Ashcroft approved the broadcast. He said the Oklahoma City survivors were, in his words, the largest group of crime victims in American history. He wanted to help them close the chapter. In the death chamber, a camera was mounted overhead, pointed directly down at the gurney. McVeigh knew it was there. In the moments before the drugs were administered, he turned his eyes upward and stared directly into the lens, not flinching, not closing his eyes, just staring. 620 miles away in Oklahoma City, the people watching said it felt like he was looking straight at them. Some said it was the face of evil. Others could not look away. He made no spoken final statement. What he gave instead was a handwritten copy of a 19th century poem, a poem written in 1875 by a Victorian writer named William Ernest Henley, while Henley was recovering from the surgical amputation of his leg. A poem about refusing to be broken by circumstance, no matter what is done to you. It ended with 2 lines. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. At 7:14 in the morning, the warden of the United States Penitentiary in Terre Haute declared Timothy James McVeigh dead. The execution had taken 4 minutes from the first injection. His eyes were still open. In Oklahoma City, a woman named Kathleen Triner held up a photograph of her 4-year-old daughter, Ashley. Ashley had been in the daycare center on the 2nd floor of the Murrah building on the morning of April 19, 1995. She had not survived. Triner said she thought of her daughter every second of the way. President George W. Bush issued a statement from the White House. Timothy McVeigh, he said, had received not vengeance but justice, and had met the fate he chose for himself 6 years ago. Most people stopped telling this story right there. At the closed-circuit feed, at the poem, at the eyes that stayed open. But the story does not end there. It is barely getting started. The federal government of the United States had not executed a single person in 38 years before Timothy McVeigh. That silence began in 1963, when a man named Victor Faguer was hanged in Iowa for the kidnapping and murder of a physician. After Faguer, the federal execution chamber went quiet. For nearly 4 decades, death sentences handed down by federal courts accumulated and gathered dust. Executions were left to the states. The federal government stood aside. McVeigh ended that. 8 days after his death, on June 19, 2001, a convicted federal drug trafficker and triple murderer named Juan Garza was executed in that same chamber in Terre Haute. Nearly 2 years after that, on March 18, 2003, a Gulf War veteran named Louis Jones Jr. was executed for the kidnapping, rape, and murder of a 19-year-old United States Army private named Tracy Joy McBride. Then silence again, 16 years of it. In the summer of 2019, President Donald Trump's Attorney General, William Barr, announced that the federal government would resume executions after what he called a 16-year pause. In the summer and fall of 2020, 13 federal inmates were put to death in a 6-month period, the largest federal execution spree since the 1940s. President Joe Biden entered office in January 2021, imposed a moratorium on federal executions, and in December 2024 commuted the death sentences of 37 federal inmates in his final weeks as president. President Donald Trump returned to office in January 2025. On his first day, he signed an executive order directing the federal government to resume and expand capital punishment. In April 2026, 2 months ago, the Department of Justice released a formal report announcing plans to add the electric chair, the firing squad, and gas asphyxiation as approved methods of federal execution. The machine that had slept for 38 years before Timothy McVeigh has not gone back to sleep. It has been stopped, started, expanded, challenged in courts, restarted again, and today it is preparing methods of execution that this country had not used at the federal level in living memory. Every federal execution carried out since June 11, 2001 traces a straight line back to that morning in Terre Haute. Timothy McVeigh did not want to be remembered as a terrorist. He wanted to be remembered as a soldier, as a man who refused to be broken, the master of his fate, the captain of his soul. What he actually became was something he almost certainly did not intend. The man who restarted the machine. Where are you watching from right now? And what time is it where you are? Drop it in the comments below. If this video made you see this story differently, hit the like button before you go. Share it with someone who thinks they already know everything about Timothy McVeigh. Subscribe to the Execution Files and turn on the notification bell. Every case on this channel is one most people have forgotten or never fully understood.